Guilty on all three charges. Gavin Plumb guilty of soliciting Holly Willoughby's murder, encouraging others to kidnap her and encouraging others to rape her. So the jury's taken just over a day, well, I suppose best part of 2 days, to come to those verdicts. They've just come into court and told the judge that they had reached those three verdicts. The prosecution case, in very simple terms, was that Gavin Plumb, a 37-year-old security guard, had been talking about a plot to kidnap, rape and kill Holly Willoughby, the ITV TV presenter, and had tried to encourage others to join him in that plot, sent many online messages. This is how he was outlining his plot online in a chat room called Abduct Lovers, but also engaging with potential accomplices on the WhatsApp platform, exchanging messages, telling them what he wanted to do, often in very depraved terms. But then he said to one of those potential accomplices that fantasy wasn't enough anymore. He wanted the real thing. And the prosecutor told jurors how he encouraged others to join him. He made lots of inquiries about where Holly Willoughby lived, established exactly where she was living with her husband and children, and also bought things to help him turn that fantasy into reality. 2 bottles of chloroform that he said he wanted to use to stupefy her and her husband before abducting her, and a number of restraints that he would use to keep her prisoner. He talked about buildings that he'd identified where she would be kept, repeatedly raped by him and others who, if they were prepared to join him, and then ultimately he planned to murder her. The defence case was that this was just fantasy. Like many others who joined such groups, there was never any intention to turn it into reality. When he was arrested by police in video that was shown to the jurors, the defence said, look, you've seen that video. His immediate reaction was, she's a fantasy of mine. I know what this is about, but it's no more than a fantasy. So that, in essence, was the two halves of this case. The trial only lasted a week or so, but in the last few minutes, the jury has decided, after almost 2 days of deliberations, that Gavin Plumb is guilty of all three of those charges.
That's right. Gavin Plumb found guilty of plotting to kidnap, murder and rape the television presenter Holly Willoughby. Count 1, soliciting murder. Count 2, encouraging or assisting the commission of kidnap. Count 3, encouraging or assisting the commission of rape. Of course, sentencing for Mr. Plumb, who is 37, will be forthcoming. But Martin, talk to us about the prosecution case, because one interesting element of this is Gavin Plumb's behaviour online, the community in which he interacted on the internet, and how that essentially was his undoing, because he ended up speaking to an undercover police officer in the United States.
Yes, he, according to the prosecution, had engaged a number of potential accomplices and had outlined his plot to some of them. Some of them had gone along and suggested that they would be content to join him, but one by one they withdrew. It wasn't until he encountered a man called David Nelson that Plumb really felt that he was moving towards turning that fantasy into reality. What he didn't know, of course, was that David Nelson was a fictitious name for an undercover police officer who was working from his office in Minnesota in the United States. And his job, among others, was to trawl the internet, looking particularly to infiltrate and monitor chat rooms that suggested users were looking to abduct people. And he came across this chat room called Abduct Lovers with about 50 members. And it was a posting that Gavin Plumb had put up that really alarmed him. He felt And he said this in evidence during the trial by video from the United States. He said that he felt, having read the level of detail that Gavin Plumb had amassed about Holly Willoughby's movements and where she lived, that he felt she was in imminent danger, imminent threat. So he started to engage with Plumb. He led him to believe that he was willing to fly to the UK and join him in the plot, at which point Plumb responded, "It's on." Within 48 hours, the undercover officer had alerted the FBI. They in turn spoke to the Metropolitan Police in London, and they spoke to Essex Police. And very quickly, Essex Police went to Gavin Plumb's flat in Harlow and arrested him. And the jury was shown footage of that police arrest, in which Gavin Plumb pleaded with them to explain why he was being arrested. Eventually, the police did say, "You're being arrested on incitement to kidnap." And he said, "Who?" And they said, "Holly Willoughby." And he said, "Well, she's just a fantasy of mine. She's a fantasy of many guys." He was taken to the police station. More footage was shown of him in a police cell at the local police station. And again, he was saying to one of the officers, "I know what this is about." But in his defence during this trial, in his own evidence and through his lawyer, he maintained that this was no more than fantasy. He never had any real intention of turning it into a reality. Now, I've sat through the trial and I've put together this report.
I only really go out my front door to put a bin bag in the bin just outside the flat. And that's every few days.
This was Gavin Plumb discussing his obesity on a BBC show.
When I'm in pain, the pain gets so bad that it's crippling.
Gavin Plumb was a man, said the prosecutor, whose concern over his own problems masked his vile treatment of women. He was obsessed with TV presenter Holly Willoughby, but fantasy wasn't enough. He wanted the real thing and planned to kidnap, rape and kill her. He tried to recruit accomplices. He had thousands of pictures of Miss Willoughby. The prosecutor said he was going to abduct her at the home she shared with her husband. Jurors were told Plumb revealed his plot in online voice messages.
Right, plan of action. I'll give you a brief rundown. Basically, we're going to hit it at night. Less traffic on the road, etc. Chloroform both of them. That way then they can both be easily restrained. And to help him restrain Miss Willoughby, he had this. Hands and ankle shackles.
I feel that Gavin Plumb posed a real threat to society. This wasn't just a fantasist, and our aim and our goal was to show that he wasn't just a fantasist and to show that he wasn't just having conversations online with like-minded individuals just for fun.
In a chat room called Abduct Lovers, Plumb encouraged others to join his plot. Holly Willoughby was his profile picture. He called himself Big Bear. Plumb was also the administrator of an online group for Holly Willoughby obsessives. Some posted deep fake pornographic photographs of the TV presenter. Such pictures were made illegal last year.
3rd of the 10th, 2023, Holly.
Plumb, a security guard, was arrested after detailing his kidnap plot to an undercover cop in the United States. The officer believed Plumb posed an imminent threat to Miss Willoughby.
Police! Stay where you are! Do not touch anything!
You're under arrest for conspiracy to kidnap.
Who?
Holly Willoughby.
I'm not going to lie, she's a fantasy of mine. I mean, she's a fantasy of a lot of guys, isn't she?
Later, Plumb said he knew what police were after. 18 years ago, on the train to Stansted Airport, Plumb twice tried to abduct an air stewardess. He was carrying an imitation gun. He got a suspended sentence. 2 years later, he was jailed after confronting 2 teenage girls at work in Harlow and tying the hands of one of them. Plumb spent most of his time at home playing online games, according to a former girlfriend who'd followed the trial.
It really has shocked me, to be fair, because that's not the person that I knew. He never showed any signs when I knew him. None whatsoever. So the fact that he's gone like this, I don't even know how to explain it.
Plumb's neighbours rarely saw him, but one heard him.
You'd hear conversations occasionally in the garden. Sometimes there was sort of unusual conversations that I thought would reference gaming and all that, and I thought that he was sort of building a gaming forum, but actually it seemed maybe it was alluding to something else, so I just thought it was a bit strange at the time. You didn't think at the time there was anything untoward until sort of this all came out on the news.
During the trial, the prosecutor didn't read out aloud the worst of the language Gavin Plumb used to describe what he wanted to do to Holly Willoughby. It was so depraved, said the prosecutor, it could have breached Miss Willoughby's legal right to privacy and might even have contravened the Obscene Publications Act. The detective in charge urged chatroom providers to get rid of such content.
I'm pretty sure that the social media companies that have a responsibility for the spaces that they own, they could have found the group called Abduct Lovers and taken steps to close it down and report to authorities.
Hi, good morning and welcome to your Wednesdays This Morning.
The host of ITV's This Morning show, Holly Willoughby, knew nothing of the alleged plot but quit her job soon after. She waived her right to anonymity, though she wasn't called to give evidence. She's since resumed her TV career. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Chelmsford Crown Court.
Yeah, coming up, we'll find out.
In the last 10 minutes, Gavin Plumb, 37, has been found guilty on all 3 counts of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the television presenter Holly Willoughby. Our crime correspondent Martin Brunt is following this for us and has been following this throughout the trial at Chelmsford Crown Court. He joins us now live. Martin, was there any reaction from Plumb when this verdict was delivered?
Yes, I mean, unusually he wasn't asked to stand to hear the verdicts. But we know from, I mean, he's a very big guy and we know that he's had lots of weight problems and he struggled when he gave his evidence last week. So he sat, as he's done through most of this trial, behind the glass wall of the dock while those verdicts were read out. He appeared to physically slump forward and just kind of peer almost between the top of the dock and the glass above it. When it came to him going out of court, the judge did tell him to stand, and at that point the judge told him that he will have to wait just over a week to be sentenced. The sentencing is going to be tomorrow week on the 12th of July. Now, you know, we don't know what sentence he's going to get, of course, but almost certainly he's going to get a jail sentence of several years. Particularly bear in mind that he does have previous convictions, and this was one of the big points for the prosecution, that although Plumb said during his evidence that this was no more than a fantasy, he admitted that he had a plan to kidnap, rape and kill Holly Willoughby, but it was no more than chit-chat in a chat room on the internet. But the prosecution pointed out, and I think this perhaps had a big impact on the jury, that he had previous convictions for attacks on women. They went back a long way. 2006, he was on a train, the Stansted Express, going to Stansted Airport, and he sat down opposite a stewardess, a Ryanair stewardess, and handed her a piece of paper on which he had written that he wanted her to get off at the next station with him. And if she didn't comply with his instructions, he had a gun and he would shoot her, he would shoot everybody in the carriage, and then he would shoot himself. Now, the target of this attack burst into tears at the time, and other passengers came to her aid, and Plumb ran off. Now, 2 days later, he tried a very similar thing. The same train, sat down opposite a stewardess, and again handed her a note. after the same thing. She refused to comply with him, and he got off at the next station, told her, OK, don't worry, you don't have to come with me. He told her he was a police officer, in fact, but she saw through that, wouldn't go with him, and he got off. But he was very quickly arrested. Now, he went to court over those two attempted kidnaps and admitted the charges eventually. He was around 20 at the time and was given a suspended sentence. Now, some people might be surprised to hear that, because 2 years later, in 2008, he was convicted in another court of an attempted false imprisonment of 2 teenage girls. He was working as a security guard at Woolworths in Harlow, and he confronted 2 16-year-old colleagues and took them to the warehouse where he tied the hands of one of them. The other girl ran off, raised the alarm, and Plumb was arrested. Now, he went to court again and admitted those offences and spent some time in jail, was given a total of 32 months in prison. Now, his defence said during this trial that although she had to accept that evidence was introduced, unusually, to the jury, she said it was such a long time ago. He was a very young man. He had pleaded guilty to those offences, and his barrister said it was unfair to hold those offences against him in this trial. But I think, without knowing for sure, I think that must have had quite an impact on the jurors who were asked to decide whether this was a fantasy plot or a real plot. And perhaps knowing that he'd done that twice before might have swung the balance for the jury.
OK, Martin Brunt, our crime correspondent there, reporting from outside Chelmsford Crown Court. Thank you for that, Martin, on that news that Gavin Plumb was found guilty of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder television presenter Holly Willoughby. Let's bring in now Hamish Brown, a former detective inspector at the Metropolitan Police and now a stalking legislation consultant. Hamish Brown, thank you for making the time to speak to us today. I mean, your reaction then, first of all, to the guilty verdict for Plumb?
Yes, it doesn't surprise me at all. His evidence of bad character, as it's known, was introduced to the jury, and this can happen to show that a person has a propensity to go and commit this type of crime. So although it was a little historic, some of the previous convictions, relevant all the same. The other thing which actually occurs to me is and I've met Holly Willoughby, she's actually interviewed me on TV on other matters. I mean, what a thoroughly pleasant and decent person she is. And this is a risk indeed for everyone in the media, and indeed particularly those who read the news, weather reporters and people like that, because people switch on and in effect they're sort of in their house because they're having their evening meal or having breakfast and they see the people there, and it is a danger for them. That having been said, let me just make it perfectly clear that the majority of people who are stalked, and this is stalking type behaviour, are ordinary people in the street rather than these celebrities. But notwithstanding that, this was absolutely awful for Miss Willoughby, and I really wish her well. I'm sure she'll have the character to move on, and I'm relieved this man has been convicted.
And Hamish Brown, you describe it as stalking-type behaviour. Much of that behaviour was exhibited through the internet, through these chat rooms, through one chat room particularly called Abduct Lovers. These corners of the internet, I guess, are populated by these kind of people. What did you make of the fact that there was an undercover police officer working from the United States who was able to ensnare Plumb and bring him into his trust and then lead to him being arrested?
Well, well done to the officer there, the undercover officer in the United States. And indeed, may I say well done to the Essex Police for putting an excellent job together. But the internet is a real worry. It is absolutely marvellous that we can communicate, we can research things. It assists so many people, but there is that dark side of it. Now, some legislation was brought in the beginning of this year. It's called the Online Safety Act, which goes some way to monitoring people's behaviour. But the difficulty is it's a worldwide web, and it can be anywhere in the world. This sort of thing can go on. And I think the service providers have a lot to answer for to let these wretched things go on in the first place. And there's got to be much more pressure, whoever wins the general election, much more pressure from governments to close these things down. It's not only the sale of zombie knives and all sorts of things, but it's scandalous. They can go out there and put this rubbish out there. And of course, people can be very impressionable, take it on, and thank goodness he didn't see through his threat.
Hamish Brown, of course, Gavin Plumb is going to face a custodial sentence. He's due to be sentenced in a week or so's time. What kind of prison time will he face?
Well, it's interesting that the judge, it would seem, hasn't called for pre-sentence reports, probably has heard enough about him and feels there has sufficient information there. This will give the defence time to prepare their mitigation, and the judge will make a sentence. It's bound, it's inevitable, it's going to be custodial, and I think it will be quite a long time. And he will be out of harm's way anyway in prison. I don't know if he'll ever be reformed, but at least he won't be doing that when he's locked up. And I think, just as importantly, it's going to send out a message to people that this will not be tolerated. And police around the world, for that matter, they've liaised with the Essex Police. They've jumped on this, brought someone to justice, and that's what's going to happen. You go and do this sort of threatening, stalking behaviour. Majority of cases, let me say again, it's ordinary people in the street, but celebrities are targets. And if anyone does that, they can expect to be locked up for a long time, and quite rightly so.
Hamish Brown, former Detective Inspector of the Metropolitan Police, appreciate your expertise on this story this afternoon. Thank you. Now, we are expecting to hear from Essex Police in the next few minutes on, of course, the news that Gavin Plumb has been found guilty of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the television presenter Holly Willoughby. Be sentenced in a week or so's time. We'll bring you that news conference from Essex Police as soon as it gets underway. Well, our other main story this afternoon, and a former school teacher has been jailed for 6.5 years for having sex with 2 teenage boys. A jury at Manchester Crown Court found Rebecca Joins, 30, guilty of 6 sexual offences following a 2-week trial. Joins had groomed the pupils from the age of 15 and was on bail for sexual activity with the first victim when she began to have sex with the second. Joins got pregnant by that second boy. Well, here is Joins arriving at court earlier, and a warning, there is some flash photography coming up. Well, the judge presiding said that there was breathtaking arrogance in Joins's conduct. The parents of one of the boys watched on as Joins broke down in tears as she was jailed. The court heard that she had abused her position of trust. Now, jurors were shown CCTV footage of Joins and one of the boys buying a designer belt at a shopping centre, the Trafford Centre. The pair were then later seen again on CCTV here, walking back to Joins's flat. The court was told how Joins had gone through a messy breakup following a 9-year relationship and was lonely and flattered by the attention she received from the schoolboys. Well, this was the moment that she was arrested.
You are under arrest at the moment on suspicion of sexual activity with a child. You do not have to say anything, but it may harm your defence if you do not mention one question, something which you later line in court. anything you do say may be given in evidence.
How's it gone so far since?
So the necessity for the arrest is obviously to protect the vulnerable and for prompt and effective investigation. So obviously you are under caution. You will be given obviously your chance to say everything at the station. But obviously for the time being you're under arrest.
The court was also told that she gave birth to a baby boy early in 2024 after becoming pregnant from one of the boys, but that child was taken away within 24 hours. Prosecutors said that Joynes tucked a pink baby bonnet into her trousers, visible to jurors during her trial, in an effort, prosecutors say, to garner their sympathy. Now, people all around the country are voting in the general election. Polls are open until 10 o'clock tonight, with millions having their say across 650 constituencies. Well, the party leaders have been out and about too, casting their votes. Daniel Henry reports.
The decisions made today about local MPs will dictate the UK's next government in Westminster. Votes are being cast across 650 constituencies, with some bringing their furry friends. Already this morning, the leaders of the main parties have been out and about casting their votes. The Prime Minister, Rishi Sunak, and his wife visited a polling station in North Yorkshire. The Labour leader, Sir Keir Starmer, also accompanied by his wife, cast his vote this morning in London, while the Liberal Democrat leader, Sir Ed Davey, voted in South London. The Scottish First Minister, John Swinney, was out in Burlington, near Perth in Scotland, and the Green Party's co-leader, Carla Denyer, was in Bristol. Some, like Reform UK leader Nigel Farage, have already cast a postal ballot. If you requested a postal ballot but didn't arrive in time, you can go to your local council to collect it by 5 p.m, then bring it to your local polling station before the polls close at 10 p.m. tonight. Voters are being reminded to carry their ID so that they can cast their ballot at polling stations like this. Sky News will bring you the full story first on the general election, with special coverage as the results roll in through the night. Daniel Henry, Sky News.
Now, in recent elections, you will have seen pictures on social media of furry friends, animals, waiting outside patiently of the polling stations. And here are some pictures of them, because why not? Now, a golden retriever clearly needed a lift after becoming worn out making its choice. But Peggy and Pepper managed to walk themselves. Brilliant. Even cats, let's have a look. There you go, performing their democratic duty. And questions about why the long face from this potentially unimpressed voter. Bernese mountain dog said to be keen to get its ballot in. Sorry, but that was nice to look at, I guess. Now, we're going to, of course, bring you full coverage of the election results as they come in with our special programme, which begins at 9 o'clock tonight. And here's Kay with a taste of what is to come.
It's finally here, Election Night Live. What do I need to get me through the night apart from these two fantastic humans? It's great to see you. What do you need? What keeps the energy up?
Need caffeine, need my Diet Coke, Diet Coke addict, and maybe a little bit of salt in there, so some crisps, maybe a bit of Parma ham. Parma ham. I know, fancy. Notions, I've got notions.
As you said, your mother wouldn't recognise you. What about you, Andy?
If I wasn't on the telly, it would be a lager or two, just to sort of de-stress after a long campaign. But yeah, I'll go with the Parma ham. Bit of toast. Do you have a toaster?
Sharing. Caring is sharing.
Toaster in the Sky Sports studio.
Yeah, we've got that. I think you'll find it's the Election Night Live studio.
You've taken it over. I get the feeling this is a permanent Kay Burley takeover.
I think it is. Look what else I've got. There we go. Do these help?
Am I going to have to tell Gary Neville, or are you going to have to?
I'm not going to say no. I mean,
will you say no on the night?
No, I will take one.
No.
Yeah, a red one.
A red one. No, are you going to tell Gary Neville?
Do you want me to tell him that you're evicting him from his studio? OK. I'll do that tomorrow on my way home, yeah.
I mean,
can't talk now, can you?
I can't talk. No. This is the first time ever, I think, in my life. Can't talk.
That's the thing to do for later on. We'll see you from 9 o'clock this evening here on Sky. Stay tuned our way.
Where else would we be, Kay? Now you're watching Sky News Today. Still to come, we'll have the latest as Gavin Plumb is found guilty of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the television presenter Holly Willoughby.
Get the full story first. This election on Sky News.
We have a sensational team lined up for you in our virtual studio.
We're going to bring you all the breaking news.
We're not just going to be focusing on Westminster. We're going to look at the whole picture.
I will be showing you lots of the data, the analysis, breaking it down.
Sky News election coverage will go further. It will work harder.
What is our country going to look like after the election?
Of course, we'll bring the facts. We're also going to have some fun.
Seriously, people, you won't want to tune anywhere else. You get the full story first on Sky News.
Lisa Dowd, and I'm Sky's Midlands correspondent. We can reveal that the driver who hit Harry Dunn is 42-year-old Anne Sakoulas.
Just met the President and we never thought we'd get this far.
This is what they're up against, is back-breaking work. Water levels are dropping, but no one knows what impact further rain will have. What would you do if this place wasn't open? We take you to the heart of the stories that shape our world.
It's really scary.
In this community, I'm told that everybody knows someone affected by COVID. Change seems tantalisingly close in this corner of the UK. This is my patch, my specialism. It's also my home.
Welcome back to the Middle East now, and Hezbollah says it has fired 200 rockets at military bases in Israel and says that they'll attack more sites. Well, this is the latest live picture now from the Israel-Lebanon border. Hezbollah says the attack is in retaliation for the killing of one of their commanders. Well, this is one of the largest attacks by the Iranian-backed militia since the war in Gaza began in October. The IDF say numerous projectiles and suspicious aerial targets entered Israeli territory from Lebanon. Many were intercepted. There are no immediate reports of casualties. Well, this video shows the Israeli missile defense system, the Iron Dome, intercepting rockets. Shrapnel from one of the rockets can be seen landing on the roof of a mall. This is the city of Acre. There are reports that it started a small fire. Well, the Israeli government spokesperson David Mentzer says that Israel will respond to the attack and take action to secure its northern border.
To be clear, Israel is countering this Hezbollah aggression. We will use all and every means necessary to restore security to our northern border and to safely return our citizens to their home. The state of Lebanon and the terror army of Hezbollah, under the guidance of Iran, bear full responsibility because of this deterioration of the security situation in the north, in violation of UN Security Council resolutions 1559 and 1501.
Well, earlier, Colonel Simon Deegans gave us his analysis of the attack.
This is a significant uptick. Hezbollah clearly are very irritated, very annoyed, very angry by the Israeli assassination of one of their prime leaders on the border. Mohammed Nassar has been a leading member of Hezbollah since 2006. So that's the indication of where they are. And of course, what it's done is just reinforce the challenge that Israel has. Some 180,000 Israelis have been forced to move out of the northern border area. So this is very serious, but it's part of this wider picture of Israel under significant pressure on the Lebanese border. No, I think Hezbollah has been well equipped. I mean, the Iranians may well have been able to resupply Hezbollah, but since the October 7th war, I mean, there's been significant interdiction of supplies through Iraq, through Syria, into there. But I think Hezbollah was well equipped for this war beforehand. I mean, the figures are quite interesting. I mean, they talk about these sort of tens of thousands of rockets and missiles available to them. Now, it doesn't really tell you what kind of size those are. But even though we saw what Hamas could do with its rocket arsenal, Hezbollah is significantly better equipped than Hamas was, and a significant threat to northern Israel if they unleashed all of that firepower. The plan, of course, they did, would be to so overwhelm the Israeli Iron Dome system that they'd cause significant casualties and damage. So that I think is the situation at the moment there.
Now, the England and Manchester City defender John Stones says that the team is fine-tuning a few things ahead of their quarter-final against Switzerland on Saturday. Our sports correspondent Rob Harris got a question to Mr. Stones at the earlier news conference.
I've said it for the past few games now that we needed to keep progressing and and try and play our fluid football that we're used to. But I don't want to discredit the other night either. I thought we were, going home after that, after 60 minutes of the game. And to change the mindset of us all and keep that belief and faith is, it's got a lot of power behind that, I think, for ourselves, other teams. Everyone watching at home knows that we're there to do it right until the last minute, literally. And I think we should take great confidence from that. That's not something that's not easy to do, especially in a high-pressure game. Understandably, the fans weren't happy with the performance. We recognise that, and I think we use that as fuel, to try and go that extra mile and make it count, and we did that. And I said after the game that now we've got to go to the training pitch, as we have done this week, and brush up on a few things and try and get ourselves playing back to where we were and that fluid football, exciting football, creating more chances, which is what we all want as players, and I'm sure that everyone at home and in the stands does as well. But to get through to another quarter-final is something I'm extremely proud of personally. Over the years, I don't think we've been that successful in our history at doing that. So, in my time I've been here, to do it repeatedly, every tournament, be there, is, it's a big thing for us, and we've got to grasp it with two hands and get to the next stage.
Obviously, you're all really appreciative of what Jude managed to do in the 95th minute. How's he bearing up, obviously, particularly with this focus on his celebration, and you're obviously all hoping he'll be available on Saturday? Yeah, no, I think Harry was lining up behind him as well, and Jude was in a great position. He's done it all season, come up with some massive goals for Madrid. He has done here as well. I think whoever would have put it in, we would have all been feeling the same now, and what an amazing moment for him personally and for us as a team. I hope he's there. I'm not sure what's going on with everything around that, but all we can focus on is hopefully scoring a bit earlier this time.
All right, you're watching Sky News Today. Still to come. A doctor in Gaza warns babies born in the territory have little chance of survival as the conflict between Hamas and Israel continues. We'll be speaking to Save the Children next. Welcome back. You're watching Sky News Today. Our top stories this hour. Gavin Plumb has been found guilty of plotting to kidnap, rape and murder the television presenter Holly Willoughby. A former schoolteacher, Rebecca Joynes, has been jailed for 6.5 years after being sentenced for 6 counts of engaging in sexual activity with a child. People across the UK have begun casting their votes, with polls open now for the general election. The director of a hospital in Gaza has told Sky News that newborn babies have little, if no chance of survival. Their mothers are too malnourished to breastfeed, and supplies of formula, like all food, are critically low. Our Middle East correspondent, Alistair Bunkle, has this report and a warning. It does contain distressing images of severely malnourished children.
The chances of a newborn baby surviving in Gaza now are not good. This child is only a few days old and fighting for her life. The bones of her exposed ribcage heave up and down as each small breath takes great effort. She barely has the strength to keep living. Look at how the nappy dwarfs her skeletal body. Her mother is so malnourished herself that she cannot breastfeed, and so her baby is dying because she cannot get the nutrition that newborns so desperately need.
Within 2 weeks, we detected more than 250 patients of malnutrition. This were all detected in the our hospitals, which means that this number of most likely increase in the coming days.
Amjad is 3 years old, but weighs only 5 kilos. His mother stays by his bed all day, helpless to do very much but cuddle her son. Amjad has now left Gaza for emergency treatment with a few other desperately ill children. They were driven across the border into Israel and then Egypt. There is hope that they will survive. Much of Gaza is now just a network of streets and alleys, lined by high mounds of rubble and the shells of homes and shops. Fuel is scarce, so donkey and cart is the best way to get around, if you're lucky. Otherwise, it's on foot. In northern Gaza, children queue with their pans or plastic buckets, patiently waiting for the daily handout of food. It is well into the summer here now. Temperatures are regularly into the mid or high 30s. Today's meal is plain rice. A couple of scoops will have to feed the whole family. Some of the children thrust their bowls to the front, desperate not to miss out. When it's almost all gone, they scrape what they can from the bottom. Nothing can go to waste. Old or young, war has little respect for age, and it is always, always the most vulnerable who suffer the most. Alistair Bunkle, Sky News, in Jerusalem.
Let's speak now to Rachel Cummings from Save the Children in Gaza. Rachel Cummings, thank you for making the time to speak with us this afternoon. What more do Save the Children needs to get the food to those in Gaza that need it?
Thank you. Yeah, those scenes of devastation impacting on children are very familiar to us in Gaza. What more does Save the Children need? We need to be able to access populations in need. We need to be able to allow our teams to travel safely to provide services to children in need. And of course, we need supplies to come into Gaza and across the Gaza Strip to reach the most vulnerable. As your video shows there, you have children desperate for food. There isn't enough food. There isn't enough clean water for children and their families. And the situation is absolutely dire.
And Rachel, what is the access at the moment to get humanitarian aid in? We know that that pontoon was built. I'm not sure how much aid is getting through there. There's often talk about the crossings being opened. I'm not sure that they are open as they were before the war began. What is the situation now? Because, you know, with the news agenda being as it was. We haven't spoken about this for quite some time.
Yeah, sure. I mean, the context is extremely challenging, and the access points into Gaza are very, very limited. The pier or the over the sea logistics transport is not functioning. Hasn't functioned for weeks. The route in from Jordan to Erez in the north is functioning, but the challenge is getting supplies from the north into the middle area and the south. And then the other route, Kerem Shalom in the south, is very, very congested, and supplies are not passing freely through there. So we are very, very limited in what supplies we're able to bring in. We know what we need to do in Gaza, but we are very restricted in what we're actually able to do for children here.
Now, I understand that the World Food Programme have recently opened a bakery in Jabalia, which they describe as at least providing some sort of food security, but it's obviously entirely inadequate, isn't it? And are they able to keep getting the supply that they need?
No, we know that whatever we're doing as a humanitarian community is not enough. We're not reaching enough people, and running bakeries or running any types of services, whether that's healthcare facilities, requires fuel, and there is not enough fuel coming in to Gaza. There isn't enough cooking gas in Gaza. So running bakeries or running healthcare services, running any type of services, transporting teams to provide those services is heavily reliant on fuel, water, sanitation. We are reliant on fuel, and that is not getting into Gaza freely. So the complexity of the environment that we are operating within cannot really be underestimated, where the needs of children in Gaza and the population of Gaza is extraordinary.
And Rachel, what conversations are going on right now to try and alleviate that need? The ceasefire talks have all but broken down. We know there's intermittent fighting in various different points. There may even be a war in the north of Israel in the next few weeks. I mean, what is happening now to try and bring this fighting to a close and make sure that the people of Gaza get the supplies that they need?
You know, of course, there's high-level diplomacy and high-level advocacy going on around Gaza, but inside Gaza, we are advocating with the UN, who are facilitating movement and are facilitating access with fuel, so that we are very clear on what the needs are in order to be maintaining the health and nutrition services, the water and sanitation services that are required. So it's multi-layered in terms of the conversations that are going on, but what we need to be driving towards, of course, is a definitive ceasefire for the children of Gaza and access to the populations in need. And that's what needs to remain firmly on the table and as a priority.
Yeah, absolutely. And finally then, Rachel, of course, it should not be and cannot be forgotten that there is still a baby being held hostage in Gaza at the moment, Kifir Bibas. I mean, I don't suppose you have any insight into the situation there and what's being done to try and get that baby out?
No, I have no insight into the situation of the hostages. I know that must be a desperate situation, of course, for their families, and we think about and feel for the children that were involved in that awful event on the 7th of October.
Okay. Rachel Cummings from Save the Children. Look, I appreciate your time, and I wish you all the very, very best in your work, Rachel. Thanks for being with us.
Thanks very much.
All right, you're watching Sky News Today. Still to come. Hundreds of competitors have gathered in Saudi Arabia for the Esports World Cup, and we'll be finding out why the decision to host the event in Riyadh has divided streamers and fans.
This is all about improving the care of children with cancer, and it's a study into a genetic test called whole genome sequencing, which is available to all children with cancer through the NHS England Genomics programme. Whole genome sequencing is special because rather than looking at just particular parts of a child's cancer genome, we're able to look at the entire readout of that child's cancer genome. This means that we get lots of useful additional information that we showed throughout the study, but most importantly, it can also change the care that some children with cancer receive. So, for example, through knowing that a child has a less risky form of cancer, we can give them less intensive treatment and therefore give them less toxic side effects from intensive chemotherapy. Whole genome sequencing is really being proved as the gold standard genetic test for children with cancer. And you're totally right to point out that one of the things that we showed in this study is that whole genome sequencing can reproduce all the genetic tests that we currently do on children with cancer. So often throughout their treatment journey, we'll do a whole host of different targeted genetic tests. But what whole genome sequencing can do is, at the point of diagnosis, get all that information in one test, which is a more efficient way to do it, and also gives that additional information which can go on to improve the care that children receive. As well as looking at the cancer genome, and you're right to say that every single child's cancer genome is individual to that cancer, and we can see that when we do whole genome sequencing. We also look at the genome that the children have when they were born. And that means we can think, is it more likely that they were going to have cancer when they were born through their genetic code? And therefore, for that child and also their family, as you rightly bring up, do we need to monitor that child and that family so we can better intervene or treat them if we need to? So as well as giving that cancer information, it also gives that information about the genome that the child inherited from their family and may also be shared with other family members, which, as you say, can be a real concern.
Welcome back now. Gamers are preparing to compete in the Esports World Cup. They're going to play in the 8-week-long tournament for part of a prize pot of £47 million. But some players, streamers and fans have been critical of the event because it's being held in Saudi Arabia, particularly because of Saudi Arabia's ban on LGBT rights. Well, let's bring in now the video game presenter, Shay Thompson, joining us from North London. Shay Thompson, great to have you on the show this afternoon. Look, we don't need to do new readers start here about esports. Everyone knows now how big a business it is. But what's the difficulty about it being held in Saudi Arabia for people who are into it?
Well, here's the thing. A lot of people, contrary to popular belief, don't think that gamers care about, humanitarian issues like, LGBT rights and, women having access to basic rights. But yeah, that's something that gamers care a lot about. And this is why there's a lot of backlash and they're up in arms.
And I mean, backlash is right because some teams haven't gone, right? That's the thing.
Yep. So not only have some teams not elected to play, but also commentators and hosts have stepped down not only from the awards and the Esports World Cup, but also from the committee. This is something that people care a lot about.
Give us an insight into how that will sort of affect the event going forward. Now, I mean, if we do the sort of equivalent in football, if people weren't going to the FIFA World Cup because of fears about human rights, and that would be a huge issue for the whole event. Are there other esports events that people can go to, or is this designed to be the World Cup of esports, the only one?
It's exactly that. This was designed to be a very prestige event. The problem is that there actually isn't a lot of equal equivalent to, say, football matches, for example. We don't have that kind of real life attending events. And so there isn't necessarily that kind of level of prestige, like I mentioned. But I think this could have been that opportunity had it been literally anywhere else. And so it is a huge shame to have it in Saudi Arabia, unfortunately, and we don't have access to that, widespread event that this could have been.
And what was the reasoning then behind the organisers to hold it in Saudi Arabia? We know what Saudi Arabia has been doing for recent years. Called sports washing, taking the boxing there, the golf, Formula One, to try and, change global opinion of a kingdom that still bans people from being gay and doesn't allow women to do many things without having a male guardian.
I think that's exactly it, right? It's trying to change that perception of Saudi Arabia. Gaming over the years has increased in its mainstream reach. People are paying a lot of attention to it. You have things like The Last of Us that are changing the perception of like what we normally think the stories within gaming can be told. And so I think this was their attempt to try, like you said, through the use of sports washing to try and clean up their reputation a bit. But like I said, gamers care a lot about, humanitarian issues now.
Yeah, and it's reported that one of the teams that is taking part and competing there is going to wear rainbow jerseys, and from the reporting that I've read, this has been allowed by the organisers. What do you make of that decision?
I think it's a nice gesture, but I think an even bigger and more impactful gesture is not going in the first place, to actually show them that, you know, we will withdraw our talents, because these teams are immensely talented, withdraw their voices. I think that's a much more impactful position, as opposed to just the flags.
So look, from what you're saying, Shay, you have made the conscious decision not to go and not to take part. I guess you're not going to be watching the events either.
I will not, unfortunately.
And in the community, those that you speak to who follow esports, what has been the reaction to that? How have people felt you're using your voice and your platform to make the decision, the choice not to go?
Yeah, I think a lot of people share the same sentiment, and regardless of other people that might say that that's just, an echo chamber or whatever, or however else they want to phrase it, I think it is important to take a stand. There are so many issues going on in the world, and it isn't enough just to kind of sit by and let that happen. More power to them, I guess. But yeah, I think it's a much more impactful thing to use your platform and maybe, donate to organizations that, are doing their best to kind of right those wrongs in the world.
Yeah, sorry, I've just got it. It was Team Liquid who decided they're going to wear those rainbow jerseys. I mean, so this event is ongoing. This debate is going to rumble on throughout the tournament. Where does it go next then? Is there a sort of an international governing body of esports that can make these kind of decisions, or is it still compartmentalised and different bodies can make different decisions about their events?
Yeah, different bodies can make different decisions about their events. It's just that the Esports World Cup and their partnership with the Esports Awards, which lasts for 3 years, it's a very, very big organization, very prestigious. Like I said, a lot of high-ranking commentators are on the committee, and them stepping down in the face of all of this will have a big effect, especially further along down the line. And I'd be curious to see if their reputation bounces back after this. I don't think it will.
It could be that severe, you think?
I think so, yeah.
Well, look, Shay Thompson, presenter and host of Formula 1 Esports Series. We will stay in touch and we'll check in with you again later on this year. Thanks, Shay, for being with us.
Thank you.
Right, to the United States and politics there. And the Democratic Party say they have got Joe Biden's back after talks with the president, following reports that he is planning, or considering at least, to not run for election. Well, the White House has denied those suggestions, but Donald Trump seized on the opportunity to say that they are true, as our US correspondent James Matthews now reports.
They're preparing a 4th of July party in Washington, D.C. This was Sister Sledge in their sound check on Capitol Hill. Across town, the mood music was more downbeat. Inside the White House, Joe Biden was performing a Medal of Honor ceremony. Inside his party, there is concern that's prompted calls for him to step down.
Consider putting our country first and putting aside your personal interest, and make that tough decision like Lyndon Johnson did under different circumstances to step aside and let us get an energetic new candidate.
Dealing with everything we have to do with...
The president's debate performance has led to party fears he could cost them the election. At a White House meeting last night, Democrat governors told him he had their support, but they had worries about the state of the race.
Because it was honest. It was candid. I think that, we always believe that when you love someone, you tell them the truth.
What we saw in there today was a guy who was the guy that all of us believed in the first time, who could beat Donald Trump, and did beat Donald Trump.
President Joe Biden is in it to win it.
I know how to tell the truth.
In the days since the TV debate, Biden's public appearances have seen speeches by teleprompter.
No one is above the law.
But no answers to journalists' questions.
Unfortunately,
stage management hasn't satisfied a party seeking a robust performance to offer reassurance.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Questions on his health and future are fielded by his staff.
Is President Biden considering stepping down?
Absolutely not. He had a cold, he was jet lagged. The president is clear-eyed, and he is staying in the race.
I have been privileged.
Growing doubts around Biden have grown attention around alternatives. Republican campaign ads are already targeting the vice president.
I can imagine what can be and be unburdened by what has been.
you know?
On Friday, the president will sit down for a TV interview. He also has scheduled campaign stops in key battleground states. In a call to campaign work...
All right, let's take you to Chelmsford Crown Court, where we are expecting Essex Police to give a news conference in the next few minutes following the guilty verdict of Gavin Plumb, a 37-year-old former security guard who had plotted to kidnap, rape and murder the television presenter Holly Willoughby. We're expecting to hear from Detective Chief Inspector Greg Wood from Essex Police. Someone's there at the microphone with their clipboard saying Essex Police. So let's take a listen.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Detective Chief Inspector Greg Wood. Gavin Plumb is a dangerous, predatory individual who was intent on causing the most serious harm to his victim. He was not just obsessed with Holly Willoughby, as he claimed. He carefully planned over a number of years to carry out a violent attack in which he plotted to kidnap her from her home, take her to a remote location and ultimately take her life. His claims in court that he was a fantasist are simply not true and were evidenced by the extent with which he plotted with others to carry out his wicked plan. Gavin Plumb also has a history of attacking other women, attempting to kidnap them using weapons and threats of violence. He is a dangerous man, and I have no doubt he was determined to carry out the acts as he planned. Today, we're extremely grateful to our law enforcement colleagues in America, who not only brought Gavin Plumb to our attention, but helped gather the vital evidence that secured his conviction. We'd also like to thank the victim, who's courageously supported this case throughout and bravely waived her anonymity. Today, Gavin Plumb remains where he belongs, behind bars. At Essex Police, we will continue to do all we can to seek out those intent on causing harm to women and girls, and like this defendant, put them behind bars. There is simply no place for dangerous individuals like him on either the streets of Essex or wider society, and we'll do all we can to continue to make our community safe for all. Thank you.
Well, that was Greg Wood from Essex Police with a brief update to the assembled media following the conviction of Gavin Plumb for plotting to kidnap, rape and kill the television presenter Holly Willoughby. Greg Wood saying that Plumb was, rather than, as he said, a fantasist, was obsessed with Holly Willoughby, plotted with others to carry out what Mr. Wood described as a wicked plan. Greg Wood described Gavin Plumb as a dangerous man, and he had no doubt that he would carry out this plan to hurt Miss Willoughby. Well, our crime correspondent, Martin Brunt, has been following this trial for us from Chelmsford Crown Court and joins us now live. So, Martin, a brief statement from Greg Wood of Essex Police. Just tell us what we heard from the officer there and also what happened in court this afternoon.
Well, reiterating, if you like, what the prosecution case was, that this wasn't just a fantasy in the mind of Gavin Plumb. He really intended to carry out this plot. And the prosecutor told, towards the end of the trial, she told jurors that even if you think it was unlikely that that plot would have succeeded, it's not the most important thing. The fact that he intended to do it would make him guilty. And that's, presumably, that's the argument that swayed the jurors. In that statement of the last few minutes from Detective Chief Inspector Wood, as well as reiterating much of what the prosecution had said, that this wasn't a fantasy, he really was intending to carry out that plot to kidnap, rape and murder Holly Willoughby. He pointed out, of course, that he'd attacked women before. He had been convicted of the attempted kidnap of 2 air stewardesses on a train to Stansted Airport, and had been convicted and gone to jail for the false imprisonment, attempted false imprisonment of 2 young girls he used to work with at Woolworths, where he worked as a security guard in Harlow. He also paid tribute to the American undercover officer, and this is really how Gavin Plumb was eventually caught by outlining his plot and trying to entice into that plot a man he knew as David Nelson on the internet, not knowing that he was indeed an undercover police officer whose job was to infiltrate and monitor dangerous chat rooms where people were plotting this kind of offence. He also, of course, paid tribute to Holly Willoughby, who did two things. She supported the investigation and the trial and also had waived her anonymity. She could have claimed anonymity in respect of the rape charge that Gavin Plumb has now been convicted of, but she decided that she would allow her name to be used. We haven't heard from her, of course. Her name's been mentioned every day through this trial, but the one person jurors didn't hear from is Holly Willoughby, because she knew nothing about the plot. It wasn't until Gavin Plumb was arrested last October that police first told her what had been planned. I've been following this trial. This is my report.
I only really go out my front door to put a bin bag in the bin just outside the flat. And that's every few days.
This was Gavin Plumb discussing his obesity on a BBC show.
When I'm in pain, the pain gets so bad that it's crippling.
Gavin Plumb was a man, said the prosecutor, whose concern over his own problems masked his vile treatment of women. He was obsessed with TV presenter Holly Willoughby, but fantasy wasn't enough. He wanted the real thing and planned to kidnap, rape and kill her. He tried to recruit accomplices. He had thousands of pictures of Miss Willoughby. The prosecutor said he was going to abduct her at the home she shared with her husband. Jurors were told Plumb revealed his plot in online voice messages.
Right, plan of action. I'll give you a brief rundown. Basically, we're going to hit it at night. Less traffic on the road, etc. Chloroform both of them. That way then they can both be easily restrained.
And to help him restrain Miss Willoughby, he had this.
Hands and ankle shackles.
I feel that Gavin Plumb posed a real threat to society. This wasn't just a fantasist, and our aim and our goal was to show that he wasn't just a fantasist and to show that he wasn't just having conversations online with like-minded individuals just for fun.
In a chat room called Abduct Lovers, Plumb encouraged others to join his plot. Holly Willoughby was his profile picture. He called himself Big Bear. Plumb was also the administrator of an online group for Holly Willoughby obsessives. Some posted deep-fake pornographic photographs of the TV presenter. Such pictures were made illegal last year.
3rd of the 10th, 2023, Holly.
Plumb, a security guard, was arrested after detailing his kidnap plot to an undercover cop in the United States. The officer believed Plumb posed an imminent threat to Miss Willoughby.
Police! Stay where you are! Do not touch anything!
You're under arrest for conspiracy to kidnap.
Who?
Holly Willoughby.
I'm not going to lie, she's a fantasy of mine. I mean, she's a fantasy of a lot of guys, isn't she?
Later, Plumb said he knew what police were after. 18 years ago, on the train to Stansted Airport, Plumb twice tried to abduct an air stewardess. He was carrying an imitation gun. He got a suspended sentence. 2 years later, he was jailed after confronting 2 teenage girls at work in Harlow and tying the hands of one of them. Plumb spent most of his time at home playing online games, according to a former girlfriend who'd followed the trial.
It really has shocked me, to be fair, because that's not the person that I knew. He never showed any signs when I knew him. None whatsoever. So the fact that he's gone like this, I don't even know how to explain it.
Plumb's neighbours rarely saw him, but one heard him.
You'd hear conversations occasionally in the garden. Sometimes there was sort of unusual conversations that I thought would reference gaming and all that, and I thought that he was sort of building a gaming forum, but actually it seemed maybe it was alluding to something else. So I just sort of, it was a bit strange at the time. You didn't think at the time there was anything untoward until sort of this all came out on the news.
During the trial, the prosecutor didn't read out aloud the worst of the language Gavin Plumb used to describe what he wanted to do to Holly Willoughby. It was so depraved, said the prosecutor, it could have breached Miss Willoughby's legal right to privacy and might even have contravened the Obscene Publications Act. The detective in charge urged chatroom providers to get rid of such content.
I'm pretty sure that the social media companies that have a responsibility for the spaces that they own, they could have found the group called Abduct Lovers and taken steps to close it down and report to authorities.
Hi, good morning and welcome to your Wednesdays this morning.
The host of ITV's This Morning show, Holly Willoughby, knew nothing of the alleged plot but quit her job soon after. She waived her right to anonymity, though she wasn't called to give evidence. She's since resumed her TV career. Martin Brunt, Sky News, Chelmsford Crown Court.
Yeah, coming up, we'll find out whether...
Well, Martin is still with us. And Martin, when is he to be sentenced?
Gavin Plumb's going to have to wait a week. It's next Friday, a week tomorrow. He'll be back here for his sentence. The maximum sentence for that first conviction, the most serious of those three charges, soliciting murder, is life imprisonment. Less for the other two convictions that have now been delivered by the jury. So 8 days, and then he'll know his fate.
Martin, just on that chat room that he was using, you spoke to the detective leading this case about it. He called for them to be shut down. Was this a chat room that was on the dark web somewhere that was difficult to find?
Right, you need a new box.
My apologies, I don't think we've got the line to Martin Brunt there, but Martin Brunt there. Crime correspondent on the news that Gavin Plumb has been found guilty of a plot to kidnap Holly Willoughby. Now, a former school teacher has been jailed for 6.5 years for having sex with 2 teenage schoolboys. A jury at Manchester Crown Court found Rebecca Joines, 30, guilty of 6 sex offences following a 2-week trial. She'd groomed the pupils from the age of 15 and was on bail for sexual activity with the first victim when she began to have sex with the second boy. Joines then got pregnant by that second boy. Well, this is